Yo guys, Jeddah in Saudi Arabia is the second track on the F1 calendar, so is next up in our F1 22 car setup series. Now this is a track that we've seen twice in quick succession, as it appeared towards the end of the 2021 season and the beginning of the 2022 season. It's a track that's notoriously hard to drive with quite a few fast sweeping corners. You really need to learn the track and feel confident in your car. This car setup will give you a very stable car that's kind on its tyres throughout full race distance. Setting up the aerodynamics for Jeddah is a little tricky. The fast sweeping corners reward cars with good rear downforce. However, we can't prioritise downforce too much due to the exceptionally long straights. So for this reason, I've gone with a low to balanced aero setup. This gives us enough speed to pull overtaking moves along the straights, but enough downforce so we can take the corners with confidence. Go for a front wing aero setup of 22 and a rear wing of 28. The higher rear wing gives us good rear stability, but does produce slightly more drag. So consider lowering it if you feel you still need a little more speed down the straights. This can be useful to do if you know you'll be starting towards the back of the grid. I've gone for a low on throttle differential setup to help with traction out of some of the slower corners. While a high differential could serve you well through the faster corners, it will make accelerating out of the slower sections, such as the slow first sector, rather tricky. Go for 58 on throttle diff and 54 off throttle. The low off throttle diff will help rotate your car into the slower corners, making up for the low front wing aero setup. The suspension geometry looks a lot like our old F1 2021 setups, and that's because this part of the F1 22 setups are pretty similar. Go pretty close to the maximum for the front camber with a lower rear camber setup. This will give us a responsive car while still having one eye on tyre life for the race. Then take off all of the toe you can for both front and rear toe. This is to solely prioritise our straight line speed and minimise the amount of drag. That leaves us with a front camber of -2.7, rear camber of -1.8, front toe of 0.05 and rear toe at 0.2. We'll want to compensate for the increased stiffness of the suspension for this year's car by keeping our suspension quite soft. Low values will help us ride over curbs better, which is key to a fast lap time around Jeddah. I've gone for a front suspension and anti-roll bar setup of 4 on both, and then I've lowered the rear suspension and rear anti-roll bar to 2. Then for the ride height, I've gone about as low as I'd want to go around Jeddah, go for 3 and 4. For the brakes, I've gone with our usual setup of 100% brake pressure, but I've set the brake bias to just 50%. Normally I'd like to increase this a little, as a 50% brake bias just isn't realistic. However, in F1 22, it's the best way to prevent front wheel lockups, and you simply don't suffer enough from rear locking like you would in the real world. For the tyre pressures, I've gone close to maximum, but not quite all the way. While setting all tyre pressures at maximum, you would get a slightly more responsive car, but it would hurt you through a race distance. Keeping them away from maximum will help you manage your tyre temperature and wear throughout a full race. Go for 24.5 on both fronts and 22.3 on both rears. This car setup for Jeddah in F1 22 will give you a well-balanced car. The aero and suspension setup in particular is designed at making this car setup easy to drive consistently throughout a full race. If you do fancy a little more top speed and don't mind a slightly looser rear end, you can get away with decreasing the rear aero a little bit. Let me know how you get on with this setup in the comments below. And I wanted to say a huge thanks to everyone who has liked and commented on our Bahrain setup. Likes and comments really help the YouTube algorithm and help other people see this video. I'm going to be releasing more car setups over the coming days for F1 22, so hit that subscribe button and the alert bell to be notified when more videos drop. But for now guys, continue enjoying the game and I'll see you on track.